There is an island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea covered in stone towers. More than 7,000 of them, built without mortar, without metal tools, without any engineering tradition that archaeology can trace to a source. Some of these towers are still standing after 3,000 years. Their stones fit so tightly, you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. Their ceilings have never collapsed. Nobody knows exactly who built them. Nobody knows exactly how. And nobody knows what happened to the builders. But the Sardinian people have always known what to call them: giants. Stand at the base of a Nuraghe, and the word giants stops feeling like mythology. The largest surviving example, Nuraghe Santuantina, rises nearly 18 meters from the ground. That is after millennia of collapse and erosion. When it was built around 1600 BCE, it was likely taller. Its central tower is surrounded by 3 smaller towers, joined by a massive outer wall, forming a defensive complex of extraordinary sophistication. The stones are basalt blocks, some weighing 3 to 5 tons each, quarried, transported, shaped, and stacked without mortar. The precision of the fitting is remarkable. In many sections of surviving Nuraghe walls, adjacent blocks meet with almost no visible gap. These structures have survived earthquakes, centuries of looting, and 3,000 years of weather. Whatever technique was used to build them, it worked. Now multiply that by 7,000. That is the accepted count across Sardinia. Many archaeologists believe the original number was higher, possibly 10,000. On an island of just 24,000 square kilometers, this means 1 Nuraghe for every 2 or 3 square kilometers of territory. Picture what that landscape looked like at its peak. Standing on any hilltop in Sardinia, you would have had at least 1 tower in your sightline, probably several. The entire island was organized around these structures in a way that no other culture anywhere in the Bronze Age world comes close to replicating. Archaeologists call the people responsible the Nuragic civilization. The main building period runs from roughly 1700 to 900 BCE. They left no written records, no inscriptions, no texts of any kind. What they left was the stone. Thousands of towers on an island in the middle of the Mediterranean, built with a consistency that speaks of a unified culture with an extraordinary command of what it was doing. And then, around 900 BCE, they stopped. The towers remained. The civilization did not. Every culture that has lived near the Nuraghe has told the same story about them. Giants built them. This is not a fringe belief. It is the consistent tradition of the Sardinian people across recorded history. Medieval chronicles attribute the towers to a giant race who lived on the island before anyone else arrived. Travelers visiting in the 17th and 18th centuries found that the local population universally credited the towers to giants, describing them as a distinct people who had inhabited Sardinia before the ancestors of the current islanders. The name most consistently given to these giants is the Shardana, and that name appears somewhere you would not expect it. In the Egyptian records from the reign of Rameses II, dating to around 1274 BCE, there are references to a warrior people called the Shardana, but they were not simply hired fighters. The Egyptian records describe how Rameses II first encountered them as raiders who attacked Egypt's northern coastline. He defeated them in battle, then did something remarkable. He recruited them. He incorporated the very people who had just tried to invade his kingdom into his own personal guard. Think about that. A pharaoh who commanded the most powerful military force in the ancient world chose specifically the Shardana to stand beside him. They appear in relief carvings at Abu Simbel, tall, heavily armed fighters wearing distinctive horned helmets, carrying round shields and long, straight swords, not standing in the back ranks, positioned directly at the pharaoh's side at the Battle of Kadesh, the largest chariot battle in recorded history. A century later, in the records of Rameses III, the Shardana appear again during the catastrophic Bronze Age invasions of the Sea Peoples. This time, Egypt was fighting for its survival against a coalition of forces that had already destroyed the Hittite Empire. The Shardana appear in those records on both sides of the battle, some fighting with the invaders, some fighting for Egypt. Whether they changed allegiances, fought for whoever needed them, or simply fragmented in the chaos of the age is still debated. The connection to Sardinia is embedded in the name itself. Sardinia, Shardana. The ancient name of the island appears to derive directly from the name of these people. And those people appear in Egyptian royal records as physically formidable warriors who operated across the entire eastern Mediterranean for centuries, feared enough to be raided against, respected enough to be kept close. When Sardinian oral tradition says the Nuraghe were built by giants called the Shardana, it is not spinning a legend from nothing. It is preserving a memory of a real people whose name survived in some of the most carefully maintained historical records in the ancient world. Oral tradition is powerful, but bones are better. Reports of unusually large skeletal remains from Sardinian archaeological contexts appear in the literature going back to the 19th century. Researchers examining skeletal material from Nuragic-era burial sites have repeatedly noted proportions that fall outside the expected range for Bronze Age Mediterranean populations. In 2012, researchers working at a Nuragic burial site reported findings that attracted significant attention: skeletal remains whose proportions suggested heights considerably above the regional average. The burial structures themselves earned their name long before any archaeologist arrived to study them. They are called Tombe dei Giganti, giants' tombs. A typical giant's tomb is an elongated stone corridor, flanked by massive upright slabs, fronted by a curved forecourt of standing stones, and anchored by a central stele that can stand several meters tall. The largest examples run over 25 meters long. They are built with the same heavy stone working technique as the Nuraghe towers. The same hands, the same knowledge, the same scale. The name was not assigned by modern archaeologists trying to be evocative. It was the name the local population had always used. For the same reason they called the towers the work of giants, because of the scale of what was built, and because of the size of what was found inside. Mainstream archaeology is rightly cautious about skeletal claims. Some of the older reports are difficult to verify by modern standards, but the pattern is too consistent to ignore. It runs across bones and buildings and oral memory and Egyptian military records. Too many independent sources across too many centuries agreeing on the same word: giants. In 1974, a farmer ploughing a field near the village of Cabras on the western coast of Sardinia struck something hard beneath the soil. What he had found would take decades to fully understand. The site became known as Monte Prama. The objects recovered from it became known as the giants of Monte Prama. Stone statues standing between 2 and 2.5 meters tall, carved with a precision and sophistication that had no parallel anywhere in the ancient Mediterranean world of their period. The statues depict warriors and archers. They carry round shields. Several wear horned helmets, the exact same horned helmets seen on the Shardana mercenaries carved into the walls at Abu Simbel. Their faces are carved with large, stylized, circular eyes that give them an intensity that does not feel primitive. Their proportions suggest individuals of considerable physical size. They have been dated to approximately the 9th or 10th century BCE. That makes them the oldest monumental stone sculptures in the entire Western Mediterranean, older than the earliest Greek kouroi by at least 2 centuries, older than any comparable figurative sculpture from Italy, Spain, or France. But the Monte Prama statues are not the only artistic record the Nuragic people left. Scattered across hundreds of sites on the island, archaeologists have recovered thousands of small bronze figurines known as bronzetti. These are votive objects, ritual pieces, each one hand-cast in bronze and depicting a specific subject. Warriors in full armor, priests with arms raised in ceremony, wrestlers, archers, mothers holding children, animals and ships. Some are just a few centimeters tall, others are larger, and several depict human figures whose proportions, even accounting for artistic stylization, are unmistakably tall and powerfully built. What the bronzetti tell us is something the towers alone cannot. They tell us that the Nuragic people had an inner life, a spiritual world, rituals and ceremonies rich enough to require thousands of individual bronze offerings spread across the entire island. They were not just engineers, they were believers. They were artists. They were a civilization in the fullest sense of the word. And yet they appeared fully formed. The Monte Prama statues have no visible artistic tradition preceding them, no experimental early attempts, no intermediate steps showing the Nuragic people learning the craft. They simply appeared, complete and accomplished, unlike anything else in the world at that time. The standard explanation for how the Nuraghe were built is reasonable on the surface. Bronze Age Sardinians quarried stone using basic tools, transported blocks on wooden sledges and rollers, and raised them using earthen ramps and organized labor. Ancient peoples achieved extraordinary things through coordinated effort. The pyramids and Stonehenge prove that. But the Nuraghe present problems that the standard explanation handles poorly. Basalt is one of the hardest natural rock types. Shaping it to the precision seen in the finest Nuraghe walls, using only stone and bronze tools, is possible but extraordinarily slow. Maintaining that standard across 7,000 structures requires a supply of skilled stoneworkers that is very difficult to reconcile with the population estimates archaeology proposes for Nuragic Sardinia. Then there is the corbelling. Inside most Nuraghe towers, the interior rooms are roofed using a technique where each course of stones projects slightly inward over the one below, until they meet at the top to form a self-supporting dome. This requires precise calculation of weight and angle at every course. Get it wrong, and the ceiling falls. The Nuraghe ceilings have not fallen. Thousands of them, built 3,000 years ago, are still intact. And corbelling appears fully formed in the oldest Nuraghe. No failed attempts, no transitional stage. The earliest structures display the same structural competence as the later ones. But perhaps the most overlooked proof of Nuragic engineering sophistication is something most people have never heard of. Scattered across Sardinia, often built adjacent to or within Nuraghe complexes, are structures called sacred wells. Underground stone chambers, perfectly engineered, accessed by long staircases that descend into the earth toward a natural spring. The staircase shafts are built with the same tight-fitted precision as the towers above ground. What makes them extraordinary is their astronomical alignment. On specific dates, the spring and autumn equinoxes, the summer solstice, sunlight enters the staircase shaft at exactly the right angle to illuminate the water at the bottom of the chamber. Not approximately, not roughly, exactly. The geometry was calculated in advance, built into the structure at the time of construction, and it has remained accurate for 3,000 years. This is not a civilization of primitive builders fumbling with heavy rocks. This is a civilization that understood astronomy, geometry, hydraulics, and structural engineering simultaneously, and embedded all of them into a single underground room. The organizational question remains just as troubling. Building 7,000 towers across an entire island with consistent technique over several centuries requires an institutional continuity that implies either a centralized authority maintaining standards island-wide or a traveling guild of specialist builders carrying the knowledge from site to site. Neither fits the picture of loose Bronze Age chiefdoms that mainstream archaeology proposes for Nuragic Sardinia. The Nuragic civilization did not evolve gradually from simpler local predecessors. When you look at the archaeological record on the island, the Nuraghe do not appear at the end of a long sequence of increasingly sophisticated stone structures. They appear in their fully developed form at the beginning of the sequence. The most impressive examples are not the latest ones. Some of the oldest dated structures display technical quality that rivals anything built in the centuries that followed. A complex culture appearing without a visible developmental stage almost always means the same thing. It did not originate where we are finding it. It arrived from somewhere else, already fully formed. Sardinia sits almost exactly in the center of the Western Mediterranean, equidistant from Italy, North Africa, Spain, and France. Whoever controlled Sardinia controlled the central Mediterranean. It is not a remote backwater. It is a hub. The same period that saw the Nuraghe being built also saw megalithic construction happening across an enormous stretch of the Atlantic and Mediterranean world. In Malta, in the Balearic Islands, along the coasts of Spain and Portugal, in Brittany and Britain. These traditions share specific technical features: massive undressed stone blocks, corbelled interior chambers, elevated or prominent positioning in the landscape. Was there a megalithic building culture operating across the entire Atlantic and Mediterranean world simultaneously? A tradition whose practitioners moved between regions, leaving the same signature of massive stone construction wherever they went? If so, Sardinia, with 7,000 towers and counting, may be the most concentrated surviving expression of it anywhere on Earth. Around 900 BCE, the building stops. Not gradually. The great period of Nuraghe construction simply ends. The civilization that raised 7,000 towers over 8 centuries does not build an 8,001st. The sculptors of Monte Prama produce no further statues. The Shardana warriors disappear from the historical record entirely, and Sardinia goes quiet. The archaeological record provides no single catastrophe, no widespread destruction layer, no burned settlement horizon. The civilization seems to fade rather than collapse violently, but it fades completely. The building tradition ends. The sculptural tradition ends. The institutional knowledge that sustained a consistent construction program across an entire island for centuries simply ceases. Some researchers connect this to the Bronze Age collapse of around 1200 BCE, the catastrophe that destroyed the Hittite Empire, depopulated cities across the eastern Mediterranean, and sent the sea peoples swarming across the ancient world. On this reading, the Nuragic civilization was fatally weakened by losing the trade networks that sustained it, and spent the following 3 centuries in slow decline before finally ending. There is a painful irony buried in that possibility. If the Shardana were both the builders of the Nuraghe and participants in the Sea People's movements, then the same upheaval that sent their warriors across the ancient world may have hollowed out the civilization at home. The people who helped bring down the Bronze Age may have brought themselves down in the process, but the deepest mystery is not the end. It is what came after. The Nuragic people did not vanish from Sardinia. Their descendants stayed on the island. They lived among the towers for generations, and within a remarkably short time, they had no idea who had built them. That kind of total institutional amnesia is nearly impossible to explain by gradual decline alone. Civilizations do not forget, in a single generation, how to build the things their grandparents built. The knowledge does not simply disappear. It gets carried forward, even imperfectly. Unless the people who held the knowledge did not decline, unless they left. "3,000 years later, the Nuraghe are still standing. The stones still fit without mortar. The corbelled ceilings still hold. The sacred wells still align with the equinox sun. The towers still command the hillsides and valleys of Sardinia in their thousands, built by hands whose owners left no name, no inscription, no explanation. Only the towers themselves, and a tradition, unbroken across recorded history, that says the same thing every time someone asks who built them. Giants came to this island. They built on a scale that still defies easy explanation. They sent their warriors to stand beside Egyptian pharaohs at the largest chariot battle in recorded history. They carved statues 2 centuries ahead of anything the Greeks would produce. They engineered underground chambers that tracked the movement of the sun with perfect accuracy after 3,000 years of silence. And then they were gone, taking with them whatever they knew, wherever they went. The towers are the only record they left, and the towers are asking a question that archaeology has never fully answered. Who were we? What do you think? Were the Nuraghe built by a civilization far more advanced than we give them credit for? Or is something else entirely going on here? Tell us in the comments below. Also, drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more ancient mysteries. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again.